Number SCP-344. Object Class Safe. Special Containment Procedures. SCP-344 is to be stored in Site Blank in a high-security storage locker. Combination changed weekly. Personnel wishing to use SCP-344 for research purposes should contact Dr. Blank. Due to the hazards presented when a can is opened, it is recommended that a remote-controlled device be used to manipulate the object. Description: SCP-344 is a blank brand manual can opener manufactured sometime before unknown year. When an attempt is made to use SCP-344 to open a can of canned food, there is a probability that as soon as the top of the can is fully opened, the food inside will be replaced with live versions of whatever the can originally contained. The amount of live material released is equal to how many separate individuals of that given species were required to produce the contents of the can, provided the weight of an individual's remains is above 0 blank milligrams. For example, if a can of tuna has the remains of 50 tuna in it, then the 50 live tuna will come out of the can. Compressing items like this into a small space causes significant pressure, resulting in the objects being propelled out with some force, potentially causing injury to anyone within the area of effect. Living organisms in a can that is opened by SCP-344 undergo no observable changes. Despite the theoretical probability of the effect's manifestation being approximately 50% recorded, Foundation tests show a probability closer to 3% for sentient organisms, 10% for non-sentient plant materials, and 0% involving redacted. It is also unknown where the live material comes from, as spontaneous regeneration would result in violation of the law of conservation of mass and energy. It seems most likely the material is either teleported to the can from the existing stocks on Earth or blank. Given experiments in log blank, redacted seems more likely. After approximately 34 hours, all sentient organisms released from the can will undergo blank. All sentient organisms should be terminated before this occurs. This does not apply to non-sentient plant materials. The item was brought to the attention of Foundation personnel on February 1st, unknown year, via a news report of a bizarre event in a small blank town. Sergeant Michael Blank had arrived home after participating in blank. His mother reported that he expressed a desire to eat some canned beef, which he acquired, and then produced a can opener from his pocket, saying he had acquired it as a spoils of war, and proceeded to use it to open up the can. Upon fully opening it, a blank kilogram heifer crushed him to death. Agent Blank, who had been investigating a separate incident at the time, immediately responded. Upon arriving at the scene and conducting interviews, he soon came to the conclusion that the can opener was responsible and confiscated it, replacing it with a facsimile. The original has been found at Site Blank ever since, with an exception of single blank. The heifer was released, eventually underwent data expunged. The event and its subsequent cleanup was covered up as a blank missile strike. Addendum: on unknown date, Dr. Blank attempted to open a can of pork in Site Blank's break room. Unwillingly using SCP-344, the can's abilities manifested and Dr. Blank was killed instantly by crushing. While an investigation was launched, it was never determined who placed SCP-344 in the break room. To prevent further practical joking, SCP-344 was moved from low-security lockers to mid-security ones, and its password changed weekly instead of monthly. Test log SCP-344 partial. Test SCP-344-25. Item: can of blank tuna meat. Result: 67 tuna and 1 dolphin, despite can being labeled dolphin-free, flew out of the can at a record speed of blank kilometers an hour, severely injuring subject D-2856 who opened the can. All the animals that came out of the can were incinerated, save for one tuna that was placed in a secure cold storage. This did not prevent data expunged. Test SCP-344-26. Item: can containing 200 nanogram sample of pigskin cells. Result: after blank attempts, test was abandoned. Test SCP-344-T6. Item: can of blanks beans. Result: it took blank tries before a positive result was achieved, suppressing that the can opener's abilities do not manifest as readily with plants. Surprisingly, instead of shooting out 900 pre-cooked beans as the researchers expected, the can instead shot out 324 separate bean plants, causing minor damage to the containment area and bearing D-class directed to open the can. All but one bean plant were burned. The remaining plant did not data expunged as expected. Conjecture: the fact that there were not 914 separate bean plants suggests that SCP-344 attempts to put beans that were on the same plant back together. Test SCP-344-T9. Item: can of blank cherries. Result: as with SCP-344-T8, it took several more tries than statistically predicted that before SCP-344's abilities manifested. Once they did, however, blank cherry trees exploded out of the can, killing subject D-8234 instantly, and making recovery of his remains difficult. Due to lessons learned from SCP-344-T8, the test was performed outdoors, preventing damage to site blank, although recovery of the escaped plants took some effort. SCP-344 was slightly damaged by the event, having one of its handles bent out of shape, which was later repaired. The cherry trees did not undergo blank. Note: given its destructive potential when summoning plant matter, SCP-344 is to be moved to high-security lockers. Dr. Blank. Test SCP-344-T12. Item: can of human remains. Result: data expunged. Test SCP-344-T115. Item: can of harvested meat from a still-living Berkshire boar. Description: the boar was placed under a surveillance in a room 3 kilometers from the chest chamber. The meat harvested from the boar was ground up and placed in a can, which was then placed in the test chamber. Robotic manipulators were used for this test. Result: after several attempts, SCP-344's abilities manifested. The boar disappeared from its room in a burst of emissions from across the electromagnetic spectrum, but not in amounts lethal to humans. At the same time, in the chest chamber, the boar was seen to launch out of the can, slamming into a far wall. The damage done by the harvesting process was observed to have been completely repaired. Class D personnel were sent into the room to contain the boar, which was mostly unharmed, despite its collision with the wall. As soon as they entered the room, the boar became extremely aggressive, culminating in it manifesting. Data redacted. Note: further testing with still living creatures is discouraged, unless under heavy containment and neutralization procedures.